Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonio Fernandez, and I serve as the Catholic Charities CEO here in San Antonio. Today, at the request of Congressman Cuellar, we will be talking about the end of Title 42 and what it means for people here in South Texas. Thank you. Congressman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again very much. And again, Antonio, thank you so much for allowing us to be here with the Catholic Charities. We appreciate what y'all do. We got Catholic Charities in Laredo and the Valley, of course, here in San Antonio, and dealing with migrants. Y'all do a lot of work, and we appreciate that. Wanted to just say a couple of things about what's going to be happening. As you know, Title 42 will be going away. I do support Title 42, but I think Title 8 is actually more effective. That's the law right now. And the reason I think it's more effective, you remember President Obama, he actually used Title 8 and he did not use Title 42. Title 42, as you know, it's expel on health reasons. It's a law, it's not a Trump law. It's a law that's been on the books for many years that you expel. It's a faster way of expelling people. Title 8 is when you actually deport people and make certain decisions where that person should be deported. And under Title 8, there's actually some teeth, which means that if you're deported, you cannot come back because there's a bar for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or lifetime, depending on the fact. So I know people think that Title 42 is the end of the world, but you actually have Title 8, and if it's done correctly, then I think you can see what we need to do at the border. Now, let me talk about a couple of things. Title 42 is going away. There's a couple of things that the administration is doing. In my opinion, some of us have been saying this for a couple of years. A little late, but they finally are doing some things that will have an impact. But since it was implemented late, we're going to see large numbers, and I'll talk about the numbers of people coming in at this time. There's a couple of things that we're seeing. One, there is an agreement between Panama, Colombia, and the U.S. that will try to slow down people at the Darien Gap. As you know, there's a lot of people coming in during the Darien Gap. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is, for the first time, we will have asylum officers inside Border Patrol facilities. Not ICE, but Border Patrol at the very beginning. Border Patrol facilities where they will make some quick decisions whether somebody should come in or go back. And then finally, there's a rule that we've been waiting. I'm familiar with the rule. I've talked to the Secretary many a times about the rule that has several things, and we think this rule will come in almost any time before May 11th. And that rule says that if you come in between ports of entry, you will be returned. You have to come through a port of entry or use the app. And there's another part of it, and I've supported this. I know some people don't support it, but if you come through a third country and you could ask for asylum at that third country, when you come into the U.S., then there's a rebuttable presumption that you should have asked for asylum at the other country itself. Because most people are saying they're leaving their country because they have fear. And if you pass through one country, two countries, or three countries before you get to the U.S., that fear is taken away. And keep in mind that I know we want to help everybody in the world, but there are certain limits. There are limits to what we can do. I've heard all the reasons, and I'm sure here y'all have heard the reasons. I'm desperate. I don't have a job. I want a better life. Crime is too high over here. There was a political assassination. There was a drought. There was an earthquake. All very legitimate reasons. But under the U.S. law, persecution, asylum, you got to have persecution by the state. So a lot of these cases, depending they change, a lot of these cases are going to be rejected. And probably some of the folks that we have here, with all due respect, probably are not supposed to be here if you apply the laws the way they should be applied. That is persecution by the state. If you're hungry, we certainly want to help. If there's crime, we certainly want to help. If there's an earthquake, we certainly want to help. But the law says It's got to be persecution by the state. And a lot of the folks that we're letting in should not be coming in, with all due respect. We also, I'm from the border. I represent a big chunk of San Antonio, all the way down to the border, Webb County, Zapata, Star. And a lot of the folks in my area are first generations. And what they did is, like my father, he was born in Guerrero, became a legal resident, became a naturalized citizen, took him a long time, and he followed the path coming into the U.S. And right now, there's a lot of people that are saying they don't like it. When I go to church, when I go to my H-E-B, sorry about that plug, H-E-B, when I go to my store, my grocery store, wherever I go, a restaurant, people are concerned. And these are not far right-wingers. I mean, these are not right-wingers. They're just folks that I've known for many years that are concerned about this large numbers of people jumping the line in so many ways. And so what we're seeing is, this current right now. And I think what we can say is we want to see law and order at the border. What we're seeing right now, I don't call that law and order, and I'm not talking about security. The border is actually very safe. It's safe. If you look at murder, rapes, and assault, it's about 3-4 times safer than Washington, D.C. But I'm talking about what we're seeing right now. And people want to see law and order at the border and still be respectful of the legitimate immigration values and rights of the immigrants. And I say legitimate claims that they have. In the old days, the profiles of people coming in were single adults from Mexico, basically coming in to do a job and then go back. Then in the 2000s, they changed, and that profile, somebody saw the 1998 law that says if you bring a child, then things change. And therefore, the uncompetent kids started coming, and then the family units started coming, and we started seeing a lot from Central America. Now, as you know, you have people from Venezuela, you got people from Nicaragua, you got people from Cuba, and literally you got a mini UN there. There's over 60 countries that are coming in through the southern border itself right now. And that puts a lot of pressure. In the old days, it was just the border communities, and now we're seeing San Antonio, because here in San Antonio, and I think the amount of monies, well, I'll talk about the program in a minute, but what we're seeing is pressure now in the sense, I can go to the San Antonio airport like I was just recently, or you go to, or trying to go into the interior. And in many ways, it's not right, because most of those people are not going to get a asylum claim. They'll be here, and they'll probably stay in the shadows for many years because they don't have a legitimate asylum claim. Right now, what we're seeing is some ICE is getting their notice to appear, or should I say, notice to report, and there's about 10 cities in the country where most of the migrants are going. New York is number 1, San Antonio is number 2, then the other cities. And in some places, like in New York, it's the year 2033 where they're supposed to report to ICE. And then once they report in 2033, up to 2033, then they get their notice to go before the immigration judge, and the immigration judge will take another 2-3 years. And then you can see how long this process. So in many ways, it's very unfair to these migrants to give them false hope, because at the end of the day, they probably won't get this, claim adjusted the way they want it to be adjusted. So I say this, and what we're seeing now at the border, large numbers. Up to date, we've seen, it's almost the same numbers that we saw last year up to date. Right now, we've seen about 1.2 million individuals that have been encountered by Border Patrol. Doesn't include the getaways. The bad guys charge about $8,000. They're making money one way or the other. They're either trying to pass drugs, fentanyl, or they're trying to pass people. And there's about, if you multiply so far, 1.2 million plus whatever the getaways are, hundreds of thousands, multiply that by 8,000, and that tells you how much money they're making just through human beings. And that doesn't even include drugs itself. So the numbers are growing, and the reason we're seeing a lot of Venezuelans and Cubans and Nicaraguans is because the U.S. doesn't have a good agreement with those countries. So in other countries, we can send back the ICE charter planes and send them back. We started to send some back to Cuba, Nicaragua, very limited, but Venezuela, there's just no agreement with them. So the Venezuelans know, hey, all we have to do is come to the border because they're not going to send us back, at least not back to that part. So reason we're doing this is because you probably will see here in San Antonio an increase because of the numbers that we're seeing right now are increasing. As I mentioned, the administration is putting some things, some policies in place, which I agree, and I've been talking about this. Some of us have been talking about it for many years. A little bit too late. And the reason I say it looks itself, I just talked to the president of Guatemala, and he said, hey, we're trying to hold, so there are people in the pipeline. That's what I mean by the pipeline, US. What we're seeing there is there's a lot of things there that the Republicans have that I agree because we've been working on this program, and my personal opinion, and I haven't talked to you yet, I think we need to go back more to the original program than the way it's grown. We originally started with $30 million and now it's $800 million because New York, Chicago, New York City are getting a drop of what we see here. And also they say, oh my God, look what's happening right now. I'm one of those that I want to see it go back more to the original, but the Republicans want to get rid of it. And there's a couple other things that I don't agree, but I'm hoping we can sit down and work those up. And in the meanwhile, numbers are going to increase for a period of time. I've been in contact, like I said, with Mexican officials, with governors from Mexico. The president of Guatemala is wanting to be very helpful. Talk to Homeland Security folks. So we want to address these issues, and that's why I wanted to give you this, because you're going to see a uptick of numbers here. Later on this afternoon, maybe around 2 o'clock, I can say it publicly, there'll be another tranche of money coming to border communities. And one of the things I've said is I want to see monies come to the southern border, because this program was started for southern border communities. Originally just the cities on the border, but I can understand including San Antonio because they're getting the folks from Uvalde, Del Rio, and Eagle Pass, maybe even some from Laredo also. And I say that because we got to address the issues, and this is one of the things that we're seeing an uptick for people coming in for a period of time, and hopefully the policy will then kick in at that time and the numbers will go down. So with that, be happy to take any easy questions, and Antonio will take all the tough questions. But no, I'm just kidding. But this afternoon, I think the first tranche of money that we put out, I think Catholic Charities in San Antonio, correct me, about $15.6 million. Is that correct, roughly? The city of San Antonio got about $4 million. That's about $20 million in this first tranche. I've seen the numbers. I think they told you, but they've asked me to hold off. There'll be another tranche of money that will be announced maybe this afternoon, and we can let you all know the numbers. So I've seen the numbers from San Antonio, Laredo, and other places, but that will be talked about later on this afternoon. So with that, be happy to start off with any questions.
So apparently there are a lot of people that believe that if they come to San Antonio, they can get help, and this is kind of spread by word of mouth as people are coming here. The resource center is apparently already full. We've seen, the city said, 4 times the amount of people come here as normal in the recent week. What is this going to mean for San Antonio if people are choosing to come here, even if the state or the federal government isn't sending them here?
Yeah, and let me talk about misinformation. Sometimes it's misinformation that somebody gets it. Sometimes it's purposely misinformation. For example, let me start off before we even get here. On the other side, the coyotes will say, oh, this is a time to cross. Do it, as soon as Title 42 is gone. This is a time to cross. All you have to do is get to the border, and then from there, you'll be sent somewhere to the interior. And so there's that type of misinformation that the criminal organizations put out, because again, the more bodies they make, the more money they make. I mean, think about that. The first 2 years, the last 2 years, 4.3 million individuals, include another couple 100,000 more getaways. Multiply that by 8, and that tells you where we're at. This year, up to date, it's 1.2, almost 1.3 million. The fiscal year will finish September 30th. We'll probably get another. It'll be over 2 million individuals at the end. So that misinformation comes in, and then sometimes it's the people that communicate among themselves. If they see some place where they're treated well, like here, the Catholic Charities does a wonderful job. Oh, go over here and help. And it's amazing what happens. It's like some years ago, there was a country in Africa that the migrants were coming through the Rio Eagle Pass. They ended up here in San Antonio. And then from there, they went to Maine. And for some reason, all the folks from that particular country were ending up at this particular city in Maine. So a lot of times it's I don't want to call it misinformation, but the information that they pass among themselves. So yeah, there is information, sometimes it's misinformation, and sometimes it's purposely done.
Congressman, you talked about the pipeline and the number of people that are coming. I know you talked to the people in Mexico and Central America. Give us a sense, how many people are coming to the border?
I got a number from Border Patrol Intelligence, and I'd rather not give it out because it's a large number. And again, you know, they're trying to put info, but I can say there's large numbers of people. Right now, I can give you just the Matamoros area. There's at least 17,000 that they know of. But in Mexico, there are certain numbers that have been put together. I can say it's large numbers. And that pipeline, and what I mean is, you know, even if we put certain things in place, there are already some people in the pipeline. And the key is to stop them before they come in. As you know, they're talking about putting processing centers in Colombia and Guatemala. So people can go and make their request there instead of making the trek over here. Because we see a lot of people here, but quite honestly, we don't see some folks that never make it up here. If the bad guys see a young, pretty girl, they're going to say, you're going to stay here with us. They see a strong guy, they say, you're going to be part of our forces here. Some people never make it up here.
Okay, so it's large.
It's large.
You know the numbers that have come up. When you were told this number, what did you think of this number?
It is a large number of folks, which means that we'll see people coming down to the border for a while. I don't know for how long, but for a while. There are things in place now that will work, but in my opinion, it's things that I've been advocating for the last couple of years. They're finally putting this, but in my opinion, they're a little bit too late, and that's why we're going to see those numbers. So if they would have done that before, let's say a year ago, then I don't think we would have been seeing the numbers that we're seeing right now. And again, look, my parents are migrants. I want to try to help folks, but we got to follow the law. And anybody who doesn't live at the border, it's so easy to be miles away. I'm not talking about San Antonio, but other places. Certain people say, oh, let them in, open up the doors and all that. But if you're at the border, I mean, even our mayor is talking about doing an injunction against Border Patrol, and we're going to talk about that. Laredo, let me give you an example. People come in through different areas. It doesn't just happen. In Laredo, we have the second lowest crossing of any place after West Texas. Sometimes we'll get 82 people, 100 people. And 94% of the people coming through Laredo are single male adults from Mexico. Can't even think the last time we got a family unit or an unaccompanied kid. And now we get them at the processing center. Laredo's become a processing center, but it's because the bad guys, they control who goes there, who goes here, who goes there. It's like a game of chase. I'm gonna move this over here, I'm gonna move it over here. That's what they do. But the numbers that I was told, they're large numbers.
Were you shocked by the number when you saw that number?
I would say that I would say I was shocked, but it tells me that the border is going to be busy for a while. if they all get to the border. Yes, sir.
Congressman, can you just tell us about the DPS vehicle inspections that you're seeing? And can you also tell us how do you know what's happening just because the state has been refusing to comment publicly on it?
Yeah, I'll tell you, they contacted CBP in Brownsville. They called me, they gave me the information. They said, we're going to do this from May 2nd to, I think, May 7th, I think Sunday, 24 hours. To redo this, without due respect, I support the men and women. My brother was DPS. I used to do the budget for DPS. They do a great job, but they should not be spending their time doing 100% mechanical inspections. When the governor says they're going to do 100% inspections, they give the impression that they're going to open up the cargo. They don't. They only have powers to do mechanical inspection. Brakes, windshield wipers, so they're going to have some of the best trucks down there at the border when they do the inspections, but it's really unfair to stop the trade and the traffic that's coming in. Those are people that are trying to do it the right way. This is a legitimate trade. And if you talk to some of those truck drivers, I feel bad for them. Who's going to put money on the table for them, for their families? Because instead of doing a couple of trips in and out, that's how they make money on loads. Sometimes they do one a day because they're stopping the trucks. So this will have an impact on the individual, the business involved in trade, and it's going to have an impact on the U.S. and Mexico economy, what they're doing there at the Veterans Bridge, or the bridge down there in Brownsville. Now, I'm trying to find out if they are going to do it anywhere else, but without due respect, that's not their job to do 100% inspections, because if you ask them how many drugs and how many people, they're doing this because of Title 42. The answer is zero. The last, remember what they did that, what was it, last year, a couple years ago? I asked one of the reporters, ask them how many drugs and people they stopped, and they said zero. Governor comes in and said, well, that's because the cartels knew we were here and they decided not to pass any drugs or people. Without due respect, they're not even opening up their cargo. So it is a wrong solution to what they're trying to do. I understand the frustration of the governor, I understand, but they should be working with us to do that and not having a negative impact on the U.S. economy, on the legitimate truckers that are trying to take care of our economy.
Congressman, the airport in San Antonio.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Antonio's doing everything he can with the location we have here, with the amount of people that he can deal with a day. Clearly, they're going to need a bigger space. Clearly, something needs to be done at the airport. There are people that are there waiting for their flights 24 hours that have no food. I have personally bought food for people and given it to them because they're small children. I have personally, as a reporter, given them Motrin because the children had fever. There was a man with open cuts all over his feet there waiting yesterday 24 hours. What can the federal government do to help them out a little bit more to help that situation at the airport?
Well, what we've done, as you know, the Humanitarian Relief, in the last few months, I think it was from December up to this last month, they did get $15.6 million. That's a lot of money. How they use it, they use their wisdom to do that, to use that. The city of San Antonio got about $4 million. So that's almost in a few months, $20 million. Later on this afternoon, we will be announcing another chunk of money for the Catholic Charities and for the city of San Antonio and other places. We'll talk about that. But again, it shows us what's happening. There's too many people coming in at the same time. And that's what we're seeing here. Go to El Paso, go to Brownsville, go to other places. You know, San Antonio is getting the overflow of what we're seeing at the border. So I understand what you're saying. I feel bad for the folks. But again, I'll still say this, what I said. Under the asylum law, a lot of those folks probably won't qualify at the end of the day. I'll just say this. And they probably will be in the shadows for years to come. We've been trying to do immigration reform. You know what the other side says. They never want to do it. They'll say secure the border, secure the border. You think what's happening right now, they'll talk about immigration reform? They won't talk about immigration reform because they'll say secure the border, secure the border, secure the border.
What's your biggest concern?
My biggest concern is the impact that it has on the border and other communities, because there are large numbers of people coming in. And my concern also is the people that make that dangerous trek. And that's why those processing centers that we talked about, we need to set up more. They can make those requests before they make the trek, because as I said a few minutes ago, some of those young girls never make it here. Some of those young men never make it here. We see a lot of them here, but some never make it up here because the criminal organizations decide to take certain action. So I want to see the legitimate process put more money, and I'm the ranking it. Republicans are in charge. David Joyce is a dear friend of mine on appropriations for Homeland. We're hoping that we can put some monies in the legitimate process. Anybody that wants to come in the right way, how long it takes, and we need to work on that.
Congressman, so, if next Friday we have another 600 people in San Antonio, we have no place to put them, the facility is completely full, what do we do then? Is there anything the federal government can do to help us besides send money?
We are going to send money, and we rely on local entities to work with us. Again, this afternoon I'll talk about the monies. There's a good chunk of money besides the monies that we sent over the last few months on it. But what else do you think the government can do itself? We're not going to send troops or other things here. And remember, what you're seeing here in San Antonio, with all due respect to folks here that do a wonderful job, multiply that by several times what we see at the border.
Congressman, as we transition from Title 42 to Title 8, what are the biggest changes and how long is that transition going to take?
Well, Title 8 has been on the books for, I think, 30 years. I support Title 42, but hey, it's going to be eliminated because of health reasons. But Title 8 actually works better if they do it right. President Obama, regardless, sometimes if you feel that you should not deport people, then you probably don't like Title 8. But Title 8 is the law that we've had, and if it's done correctly, it would address it. And the reason is because it has teeth. Title 42 has no teeth. You expel people and they come right back. Title 8, you deport people and there's a bar. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, lifetime bar. That bar means you can't just be sent and then you come right back. And I'd rather have consequences because, sometimes my colleagues on the other party will say, oh, we got to add more money, more money. Since Trump, we've added $2.4 billion more to CBP. $2.4 billion more to CBP, Border Patrol, ICE, and all that. 2.4, that's a 15% increase. So money's important, but you got to have the right policies in place. If you don't have the right policies in place, that's one thing. And the other thing, I'll say this. We always play defense on the 1 yard line called the U.S. border. Using football as a strategy, I'd rather play defense on the 20 yard line. Do the processing centers, hold folks before they come here, let them do it the legitimate way. Anybody who knows basic football, you play defense on the 20 yard line, not on the 1 yard line called the U.S. Mexico border, because then U.S. Mexico border, because then they'll cross, they'll go into Laredo, Brownsville, El Paso. I just got back with the appropriations, Tucson, Nogales, El Paso, and it's the same up and down. The biggest activities right now is number one is the Valley, El Paso, then you got Eagle Pass, Rio. Like I said, my hometown Laredo is the second lowest. It's because it's who controls on the other side.
How soon are those processing centers supposed to open? I think one's supposed to be in Capurnaga in Colombia and the other one in Guatemala. Last week on the 26th, Border Patrol sent up from Panama, I got the numbers, 3,096 came out of the jungle in one day. So how quickly are we going to get them going to stop that flow?
One of the things in my new role is I'm trying to get CBP and other folks to move faster. And I don't exactly know, but I certainly want to make sure they move it. That's one of the things I want to see them move faster. For example, Border Patrol, we've given them money to hire more Border Patrol, and it takes a long time to hire Border Patrol agents, even though we put money there for them to hire. But on those processing centers, there's two things I want to say. One, try to set them up as soon as possible. And two, stop paying money like it's a federal government. And by that, I mean, we spend so much money down there, or even on the U.S. side, and we got to get better deals with those private contractors that we deal with. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any talk in Congress right now about reforming the work authorization for the migrants and asylum seekers? Because obviously there is a labor shortage in the U.S. and filling those jobs in restaurants or, out in the farms. Are we talking about that?
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, because if you saw the numbers that just came up, the employment jobs were really high, the unemployment was very low. You can go to any place here in San Antonio or the rural areas, Laredo and other places, we're hiring. So there is a need, even though we're filling up a lot of those jobs. And what we don't want, there's a couple of things that concern me about all the people coming in. It's one, how fast can we get them the work authorization, number one, so they can work? And number two, housing shortages for Americans, for people that are here. The Secretary of HUD put out the numbers, I should have brought the numbers here with me, and they said there is a large shortage of affordable housing for Americans. So if you got a shortage for Americans right now, and you got them here in San Antonio, you got them in Laredo, look at the list of people, the long list of people that have to wait to get affordable housing. And then we're adding hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Where do you think they're gonna be if there's not enough affordable housing? And number two, they're waiting to get to work on that. So yes, we're looking at that to see if we can get them to work as soon as possible.
In a recent interview with Antonio, he mentioned that a possible way the government could help would be to transport the migrants claiming asylum from the border directly to their host cities. What do you think about that idea, and is it even possible?
Well, certainly a lot of times, how should I say this? In the old days, and this is one thing, when I set up the Humanitarian Relief, I did not want to use federal dollars to pay for airplane tickets or bus tickets. I mean, if they have a sponsor, a family member, let them pay for that. But I don't think it's the federal government to pay airplane tickets or use taxpayers' dollars to do that. If they have a family sponsor, they should do that. Now, there are some that come in with no family sponsors at all. I understand that. I mean, right now, Governor Abbott is sending people up there, so the government is paying for the end of the trip. So if you look at it, should they pay a coyote $8,000 to get to the border, and then should the federal government pay for their? I don't think we ought to finish that last part of the leg.
Just that I went to the airport. Lo voy a hacer en español para
Sí,
que
cómo
me
no.
contesten en español. Vimos más de 150 migrantes en el aeropuerto. Más de 10 de ellos nos dijeron que Caridades Católicas pagaron por su ticket.
¿Qué?
Más de 10 de ellos dijeron que Caridades Católicas habían pagado por su ticket de una noche a una mañana para Nueva York.
Bueno, ese es algo que Antonio, pero mi posición es muy directo. Los dólares federales no se deben de usar para pagar boletos. And again, I haven't talked to Antonio about that. That's been my position from the very, very beginning. Now, the other side of the argument is, well, we don't want them here in San Antonio, so we have to move them out. Right, Mike? I've heard that. Or in Laredo, my mayor, if you remember, the former mayor was sending buses, the city was paying to send them up to Dallas and Houston. Not San Antonio, but Dallas and Houston. So sometimes it's done that, quite honestly, because they don't want them in a community, and that's the other argument. But my position, and remember, I want to put this Humanitarian Relief, this is something that I started working on it since 2014, and I want to see it more the original, where you help people or non-for-profits or cities with basic needs, food, medicine, to take care, shelter, to take care, but transportation, in my opinion, should not be included. Now, keep in mind that the Republicans on HR 2, there's a provision that wants to get rid of that because they think they're trying to say they're coyotes, legal coyotes is what they're saying. I don't agree with that, so there's going to be, I can tell you right now on that one, I'm going to fight to keep some sort of reasonable funding on it and go back to the original, and hopefully the Republicans, we can convince the Republicans not to get rid of this, because we do need to have basic food, shelter, medicine to take care of the migrants that do come in.
Un mensaje en español para los migrantes.
Después. Sí, bueno, es importante donde el gobierno federal pueda ayudar con servicios de comida, viviendas para los inmigrantes. Si estamos hablando de pagar los aviones o otras cosas, transportación, en mi opinión, es no. Pero las cosas básicas para cuidar eso, quieren quitar totalmente todo el dinero. Si se quita todo el dinero, ¿qué va a hacer Catholic Charities aquí en San Antonio, o en Laredo, o en El Paso, o en el Valle? Todo la responsabilidad va a estar en las comunidades locales. All right, thank you. I'll be around if y'all want to do any individual, and then I'll be running off after that. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Antonio. Thank you so much.